Hi everyone, how are we today? God bless you, God bless you. Today I'll be talking about how regular do you make love with your partner? How regular do you make love with your partner? My name is Cindy Williams. I'm a gospel singer and a worship leader. And I'd like to thank you once again. I always do that. Thank you so much. Without you, there will be no me. Thank you so much for joining me. God bless you. And keep on tapping into this project in making our homes, in making our marriages sweeter, better, and more fun. As Christ followers, the Bible have a clear and helpful answer, to how frequent the married couple should have sex. Bible have a clear, answer to this, and a helpful one. How regular do we have sex? And if you can join me to the book of First Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1 to 5. I'm going to read it actually, please, if you don't mind. First Corinthians chapter 7, from verse 1. It said, now regarding the questions you asked in your letter, yes, it is good to abstain from sexual relationships. But because there is so much sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman should have her own husband. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. He said, do not deprive each other of sexual relationships, unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come back together again, so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I'm going to stop there, verse 5. Sex in marriage should be regular and continuous. Although other texts from the Bible, help us to, like I said before, answer this question: how often should we have this? How, we hear that, people say that, and, most especially in the body of Christ. But the truth is that do not deprive each other. The truth is, do not deprive each other. And I have 5 biblical guidelines, for refraining. If you're going to refrain, if you're going to abstain for a short period, it's from this First Corinthians we read, and I have 5 biblical guidelines that we need to, stick to if we're going to refrain from having sex. Refrain for a short time. Number 1 is mutual consent. Mutual consent. According to this verse where we read, it said both the husband and the wife should agree not to have sex. Both of them should agree not to have sex. It said do not deprive one another except with consent. It said the decision as to whether or not to have sex is, literally between you two. Between the husband and wife, you have to agree, on that. You have to talk about it. That's where communication comes in as well. We have to talk about it. Oh, I'm going to make it, I'm going to pray for so time, and I want you to bear with me, but you have to agree. You have to set a date to do that. Sometimes you might, the Lord might release you to pray, to just go into prayer. Yes, I get that, but you have to discuss it. Number 2, a specific period of time. Predetermined or prearranged, a specific period of time. Predetermined and prearranged. The verse continues, it says, except with consent for a time. Neither the husband or the wife should believe that restraining is indefinite. Common examples can include a couple agreeing on one having sex while the wife is on either her period, or why she's visiting the relatives, or the husband travel based on job. That's an agreement. The preferred way to treat this should B, to provide the next time to expect to have sex again. As soon as I stop bleeding, as soon as I get back from my trip, as soon as I'm feeling better, maybe you're sick, you're giving them a specific time to look up to look forward to have sex again. Number 3, a specific goal. A specific goal. In the text, the specific goal mentioned is a time of fasting and prayer. He said, I do not believe that that is the only time. However, me personally, I do not believe that is the only time. But however, it certainly is one time a couple may choose to refrain from having sex. As I mentioned earlier, there are many times, it might be, wise for a couple to refrain from a specific period of time. Wisdom should be used together as a couple in relationship to sickness, to surgery, pregnancy, travel, emergency, busy days at work, and all that. But the key here is that the couples, have agreed together that this is a time we need to refrain. I said a specific goal when this should happen. Number 4, caution associated to sexual temptation. Caution should be, exercised before abstaining so as not to give Satan an area to tempt either spouse. The text continues, and come together again so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. There are 2 issues to note here. Number 1, as you consider abstaining, you need to take into account the temptation level of each other. The couple who, does not consider the issue of temptation is in a very weak state and a dangerous position. The context of this whole passage is to glorify God with our bodies, especially in regard to sexual immorality. The goal is to limit temptation as much as humanly possible. That's the goal. Second, there is never an excuse to sin just because of lack of sex for a time. Purity must be maintained regardless of the frequency of sex. You do not want to let Satan get a foothold in your life in that area as believers, as Christians. The 5th one, do without should be terminated. Doing without should be terminated. Abstaining, avoiding as soon as possible. When a decision is made between the husband and the wife to abstain for a period of time, I urge you to determine when you will have the sex again. A wife could say, I have a headache, I am not in the mood tonight, but I'll prefer not to have sex today, or I'm not, women, a lot of things put us out of the mood, and that you've heard the news upsets you, or some people, don't get me wrong, some people, that's their motto, that's their logo. They always say they're not in the mood, but genuinely, if you're not in the mood, and then you tell her, please, I'll prefer doing it before you go to work in the morning. Or the husband says, oh my dear, I have backache, my back is killing me, tonight I will not be able to do because this job I did yesterday and it's smashed up my back, I won't be able to do it tonight, but tomorrow as soon as I feel better, we will do it again. In both instances, the husband and the wife requested by mutual consent not having sex that night, and in both instances they both offered the time in the future for which to anticipate, to look forward to. So how often should a husband and a wife make love? It should be as often as possible. As often as possible. But I want to suggest that let it be what works for both of you. You need to know what works for your marriage, what works for your sex life. What works for A might not be able to work for B. So you should have sex often, as often as possible, to keep each other satisfied. This is very important. It's very important. So the goal is lovingly giving to the spouse. Therefore, the question of frequency depends upon the answer of satisfaction. in season, of life, this question may be answered differently. And in another reminder, do not forget the focus is on the spouse satisfaction, not your own personal satisfaction. So ask yourself this question: is my spouse satisfied? You should have sex often to avoid sexual temptation. So I'm going to round up with this quote from Dr. Bob Smith. Dr. Bob Smith, he says, the question is not when shall we have sex, or shall we have sex, or when are you going to want sex, but when shall we not have it? That's the question. So that means you're supposed to be having it all the time. You're supposed to be having it all the time. So my advice to you is choose what is, what works for your marriage. If it's having it once a week, that is good for you and your husband, fine. If it's twice a week, if it's every day, which I know nobody does every day, but choose what works for your marriage, so that your marriage will be sweeter, it will be more fun and better. Thank you once again. If you do have a question or concerns or comment, please, I want to hear it in my comment box and I'll answer you. Thank you, and see you next week.